legendary author, activist, professor. Bell Hooks passed away on the 15th of December. Bell Hooks, you'll see like a lot of books behind me, and I have moved many times, and every time I move, the books get culled, and they get culled and culled and culled. And when I heard Bell Hooks had passed away, I knew exactly where to go to get one of the many books of hers that I have on my shelf, Wounds of Passion. This is her book about her own life, her own writing life. And she has meant a great deal to me. She's also meant a great deal to women across this country and people of color and any number of other groups. Joining me now is my partner in crime for these second halves of the show, Jocelyn Macurdy Keatts. Jocelyn, how are you?
Hi, Julianna. Yeah, I wish we were talking about happier things, but
I mean, her work is so fundamentally powerful that it is kind of a happy thing. It's unfortunate that she passed away, but if I feel like when I die, I'd like to be like, okay, I did the thing that I came here to do as a soul. You know what I mean? And I feel like she's one of those people who cannot mistake that her mission was accomplished.
You know what? When you put it like that, that is a happier way of looking at it for sure. She's just, I mean, it's really interesting to see, especially again, women and women of color posting about Bell Hooks today, because it's just, she has such a powerful impact on people. Like I'm sorry, am I echoing?
No, a little bit, but it's okay.
Let me turn my volume down. There are lots of great writers, but there aren't necessarily people who every time you read one of their books, you walk away changed. And she is that type of writer because she is not afraid to bridge the personal and the political in a way that, like, I don't know that many people were doing before she started writing her books about everything. It's like,
yeah, look at all these books. Look, I went to get her pictures of some of her books, and I couldn't get pictures of them all. They wouldn't see that last one. They wouldn't load fast enough for me to get the images for you all.
Yeah.
What was the first Bell Hooks book that you ever came across? How did you come across?
So mine is probably pretty stereotypical, all about love, but
that makes sense.
Right.
Actually, when I was, yeah. How did you find it? Where were you like in the?
I think it's, she's one of those writers that, like, if you're a little bit into this sort of anti-capitalist psychology thing, or I don't know,
anti-imperialist, anti-capitalist, anti-racist. Right. She had a way of saying it very succinctly what she was all about.
And she's, she was sort of everywhere. I started reading her books in my early 20s, and it's just like,
See, now I had a completely different experience. I went through an entire college career. I have a philosophy degree. They were just, when I was in college, they were like, we're building a women's studies building. We might have a women's studies. They didn't have that. And in addition to that, they didn't have, it's not like her work was folded into what I would call men's studies, which is philosophy, a history of men's thoughts from Europe. I want to think about men from Europe, so I did enjoy The Life of the Mind at that point. And I came across her because I worked in publishing, and I worked for Routledge, which is academic publishing. And we published her book, which was Where We Stand, Class Matters. And I was reading it for my work, and I'm like, my mind is blown. Who is this woman? And I wanted all of the books, which when you work in publishing, it's pretty easy to get your hands on. I got the whole author library, which is amazing. And, I had not heard anyone speak that way in my entire life. And she put so many things into context.
I do think I agree with that. I think that's when I think about Bell Hooks, like, she's one of those people who, she doesn't really belong to any other category. And she herself rejected those categories. She's like, okay, sure, this might look like a book about race or a book about class or a book about relationships, but I'm going to take its implications everywhere. We're going to talk about how capitalism shows up in the home. We're going to talk about how white supremacy shows up in relationships. Like, she just wasn't afraid to fall into those categories set by old white dudes, as you put it. Like, because I felt that way in college too, right? You're taking these classes. It's like, now we will talk about John Locke. Now we will talk
I think
about
I have that book.
yeah, it's like, all right, I guess. But in the meantime, there are all
As
these
if those guys were the first dudes to ever think that fascinating thought about, you know what I mean? Like, well, come
right.
Meanwhile,
Like,
their wives are like raising their kids and doing all the action that you have to do in the world. Anyway, don't get
yeah,
me
or
started on John Locke.
writing just as prolifically. I mean, I was shocked when I grew up and started reading about the personal lives of these men, and realizing that, shocker, a lot of their female partners were writers, intellectuals, first readers and editors of their work, and yet we don't hear about them. Why is
Mrs.
that,
Locke
I
has not
wonder?
made it. No, Mrs. Wittgenstein, Mrs. Plato has not made it into the into the yeah. Well, it's interesting, the love book that you mentioned. So last night, as I was preparing my thoughts about our segment here, I got to watch like 15 videos of her speaking, and I suggest everyone go out and do that. There was a beautiful talk where she and Cornel West spoke at the New School. I watched that whole thing, but I did watch kind of an older piece where she talks about the intersection of love, and she talks about American society. And I grabbed some clips for you. Jocelyn, so you just basically came across her stuff like in the bookstore, just so I'm clear.
Just, I mean, she's one
There
of
was
those
no
people
internet
that's frequently quoted and referred to. So, when All About Love, I think I have no idea, but I suspect that All About Love is one of her better selling books, because she's written 30, and they're all good. They're all knockouts, which is very rare. I find personally that you get really hyped up about one writer or thinker, and then their other stuff is kind of meh. But that's not true with her. I mean, her books about, I honestly, she's like, I think I've read like 5 or 6. It's, she has so many, but Communion is also very good. The one that is addressed specifically to men, hold on, I wrote it down. Where is it? Oh, The Will to Change. That is a really good one. If you want to talk about toxic masculinity specifically, that again also blew my mind, because she also writes from a place of sympathy and empathy, which is rare if you're reading. She doesn't have an axe to grind.
Actually, that really comes through in this interview piece, because she talks about how she talks about she quotes Martin Luther King, and she talks about the difficulty that people of color have in having to forgive these aggressors and transgressors, but how important and absolutely necessary it is, lest that I guess lack of forgiveness will enslave you internally and I guess externally. Let's take a look. This is a really interesting. Do you mind, Jocelyn?
No, of course not. I would love that.
Videos. So this is where she's talking about our personal attitudes about love and how they intersect with life. Giancarlo, this is the first one from the video.
Our personal attitudes about love are tied to our culture's politics, to what our nation tells us is important. I mean, that chapter on greed, where I talk about the fact that one of the wonderful aspects of love is giving, and that as we give to others, we grow in our capacity to connect. I mean, the first major chapter in the book says, how do we define love? How can we know love in a culture where most of us don't have a sense of what it is? In fact, the book is dedicated to my ex-boyfriend, the younger man that you just evoked, because we had these continual fights and are still having them after 8 years. We broke up 5 years ago, where we kept talking about, well, what is love? And it was clear that he felt often that he didn't know what I was talking about. And then I talked to other women who say the same thing about the partners in their lives, men who say, well, I don't know what love is. So I try to...
Which sort of echoes that idea that gender does make a difference in the way women look at love and men look at love.
Well, I think what most men feel, they're not looking at love at all. And so part of what the book tried to say is, perhaps if we had common definitions, if we started out from a common point, I mean, what would it mean for us as a nation to start off feeling that love is important for males as much as it is for females. Because deeply embedded in our national psyche is an assumption that love can't be important to men. How will men go and fight wars if they are dedicated to love? And until we begin to recognize that love has to be essential to men if we're going to end sexism, if men are going to reclaim the spaces where they can be connected to their feelings, to their fathers, to their mothers in different kinds of ways. But partially the book says romantic love has been the myth that has, as the only love that really matters. It challenges that notion. That's one of the new visions, that it says the foundation of all our love, like the foundation of a house, there are certain principles that will make you have a sturdy house. And those principles are the same irrespective of the kind of house you're building. The same is true of love. And we have been a culture that has over-valorized romantic love, that no matter how horrible and miserable your life has been as a kid or as a teenager, someday you're going to find this love and it's going to come into your life and it's going to change all of that. And many of us found that that was not so. And I think a lot of men felt that one day they'll grow up and they'll be humanized by a woman or a partner giving them love, rather than thinking about what will it mean, what will it take for me to become a loving person? Well, I mean, I use a kind of M. Scott Peck, I love his
you
work.
quote him a number of times.
I know it probably offends a lot of people that this intellectual is quoting M. Scott Peck, but I felt that his books, I love mass literature. I love the fact that we can have books like The Road Less Traveled, like Thomas More's Care of the Soul, that reach out with broad intellectual concepts to a wide audience. And I particularly take his definition of love as the will to nurture one's own and another's spiritual growth, and link it to Eric Fromm saying, love is a combination of care, knowledge, responsibility, commitment, and trust. Because one of the things that's happened in our culture is we equate love primarily with care. And that's why we can say parents who brutally beat their kids but who still love them. Because I look at my own childhood and I say in the book again and again, my parents cared for me deeply. But they also wounded me in ways that were violating, wounded my spirit. And I think that I would be a different person today had they not given me care. Because I've met lots of adults who didn't get care, but I did not feel loved.
You talk about how
Fascinating.
Well, and it's, I love that we're talking all about love, because she does talk about women in this society are taught to equate our personhood as coming to fruition through a romantic relationship or even like becoming a mother, where she's right. Men are taught to fight wars and run companies and earn income. And like, it creates this incredible spiritual mismatch in interpersonal relationships. And that doesn't come out of a society as capitalistic and racialized and gender segregated as ours on accident. Like, it's all related.
No, it's all also by design. I mean,
Yeah.
everything I've seen, I mean, we did so much this year. And as we close in on the end of the year, we did the anniversary show for Occupy Wall Street. It was, I think, a decade since Occupy Wall Street, and we talked a lot on that show about the actual feeling in the park, in Zuccotti Park. And it was a feeling of solidarity and unity. And wherever I find that feeling, I find that, the forces that she often names, capitalism, patriarchy, all of those things, racism, the forces that would forward those things are always trying to clamp down on the springing forth of the natural unity and solidarity between people. That's why they try to break up unions. That's why they try to, and these unions and Occupy Wall Street are made of fallible human beings, but that didn't stop sort of the vibe of love from coming out of there. And, those places, it's just so interesting. I was doing a research about the segment I did right before this, and I know you were watching, Jocelyn. It was a segment about health and healthcare, and so I was watching a lot of Marianne Williamson's videos of what she said when she was running for office. And one of the things she said about healthcare was, we have a sick care system, you get sick, and then she mentioned, actually, I don't want to get off topic here, but it's like a 1-minute clip. Let's play that clip, Giancarlo, if you have it, because she actually talks about that. And then she mentions love as what we should be basing our politics on. And it was like, just see how fast they shut her down when she talked out of the script. Giancarlo, do you have that one to run?
And gentlemen, we don't have a health care system in the United States. We have a sickness care system in the United States. We just wait till somebody gets sick, and then we talk about who's going to pay for the treatment and how they're going to be treated. What we need to talk about is why so many Americans have unnecessary chronic illnesses, so many more compared to other countries. And that gets back into not just the big pharma, not just health insurance companies. It has to do with chemical policies. It has to do with environmental policies. It has to do with food policies. It has to do with drug policies.
Thank you,
It has to do with environmental
Senator
policies.
Bennett, a question.
As soon as she said it has to do with chemical policies, it has to do with environmental policies, it has to do with food policies, Lester Holt was like, okay, that's enough. We got it. And he talked right over her. And I also enjoyed the fact that she's this sort of petite woman speaking to these 20 dudes. I mean, I know Kamala Harris was also on the stage, but she wasn't pictured in that in that visual. And she went on after that to talk about how we need a politics based in love. And it was like they cut her off just as fast as they cut her off from that segment. And then everyone smeared the shit out of her. Whereas, Bell Hooks's work is like it's the land, it's the soil from which these ideas are springing. And it's great to see them kind of springing up everywhere, even on our democratic stages.
Well, it's incredibly, you think about someone like Bell Hooks, it's like, wow. I mean, we're all better for the fact that she was here and that she could have been pigeonholed into anything, as a lot of activists and thinkers are, right? She could have just focused on feminism or Black feminism, but she sort of rejected the premise that these are all siloed issues. And she rejected it no matter what she was doing, whether it was teaching or writing as prolifically as she did or her activism. She's like, no, this isn't, it's like you were saying, Juliana, like this serves somebody. It serves somebody to have all of us in these disparate silos of resentment. But again, the way she does it is just so poetic and inviting. It's really hard and sad to think that, because 69 is not old.
No, it's young.
I mean, think about some of these guys in Congress who are still, flushing our future away in their 80s. It's like, could they maybe like Venmo her some of those years?
Yeah, really. Well, only the good die young is what they say.
Yeah, exactly.
Keep some of those bad habits, people, if you want to live. I have another segment of her, and I'm sorry kind of that I got, that I didn't mean to get us distracted by playing someone else, but I did think there was overlap, and I really wanted to play that in the last segment, but we got off, and here we are. She talks about, this is from the same talk, and oh my gosh, there was other things I wanted to say about that first piece. Did you notice that the guy, it was like when he would speak, he had this sort of man gravitas to his voice, but what he said was just like, so men and women think of love differently. Talk about like that level of that conversation. And then what she did with it. It was just, I was just like mind blown. I don't even know what the hell she was talking about.
Yeah. Well, right. And which is ironic because that's exactly what she's writing about. That, men are socialized, and obviously all men don't fall for it, but men are socialized to be sort of avoidant, alienated from their emotional selves, and to expect to be humanized, as she said, within the context of a romantic relationship with a woman. Because again, we also have a homophobic society. So it doesn't leave any room for men to be emotionally integrated in their own right and to not be people who confuse love with violence. And she writes about that with her father a lot. Her father is a man who would beat both her and her mother. And she rejects like the popular, now the internet's like, if he does this, he don't love you. It's like, you know what? Bell Hooks is like, actually, it's way more complicated than that. We have a society which is violent. It obviously extends into the realm of possibility that people can be violent towards the ones they love in a world which has become toxic and confused.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. She also started that segment out by talking about how love is about giving. And I think that's so interesting because capitalism is about taking and beating and
Yes.
investing.
Yes.
And we're all part of it every single day. So how do you, spend time in the marketplace and everywhere else in your life and then come home and have to switch your entire personality?
Yeah.
And, not that you just love in the home or in your family, but, or just give in your home and family. But it does seem like society set up that way. You give and love at home with your family and some of your friends. And then when you're out there, you just, you lose your sense of integrity because you're forced to give it up. It's really interesting that she said that love was really about giving.
I love that you bring that up because it is fundamentally irrational, the way the psychological ideas that are so popular in this culture, right? Like firm boundaries, be professional, be this cold avoidant person, then come home and connect, share, maintain one physical attraction to one person for the rest of your life while not sharing any of your emotions with them. Like these are insanely high standards to hold people. And maybe I don't even want to say high standards. They're just standards that don't really make sense with how humans work.
Inhumane, right? They're not human standards.
Exactly. Right. And that's what Bell Hooks is so good at pointing out. Like we can't teach people to go off to war, to compete over resources as a primary goal and then come home to their friends and their community and have wonderful social relationships. How does that work?
Actually, in the next segment I have from her, we'll play it in the next segment I have from her, it's a little bit shorter, but she talks exactly about that. She talks about how well, you'll see. I'll just let her say in her own words. Giancarlo, can you play the next one? Our nation is yearning for love.
For love and community. That people want to know how we can live deeper and more meaningful lives. And the focus on the Dalai Lama, the focus on a Buddhist monk, Thich Nhat Hanh, whom I quote a lot in the book, is we have been looking for those spiritual teachers in our life today who can help us return to love and community. And part of what is interesting about us as a country is that the vast majority of people in this country still say they're Christians, when we know one of the heartbeats of Christianity is the idea that God is love, that we are realized more fully as spiritual beings through love. So the question becomes, if we think if this is at the core of our beliefs, why are we not living it out in our actions? And that's a kind of political and spiritual question, because I feel like we have to attend to the needs of the spirit. And one of the things that I would say about the American left is that the American left has never been interested in talking to the needs of the spirit.
Its rhetoric is not loving.
Exactly, and that's part of why the conservative right wing always reaches out more to masses of people, because it acknowledges emotional needs. It acknowledges the needs for family values.
I listen to you, and you're losing your reputation as a radical.
Well,
you're
see, I feel like
about
I'm trying to make radicalism be true to the spirit of itself, which is if you are thinking wrongly, that you have to be willing to change that thinking. I think the left has to begin to talk about love. I mean, was there any more radical movement in our country than civil rights, in the sense that, feminism is radical, but men and women have always lived together. The civil rights movement, the end of a certain kind of white supremacist apartheid, that was about love. And it changed us, and it changed us as a nation for the better. So I don't think that I'm, breaking with that tradition. I'm trying to re-evoke it, because by losing it, we are losing the kind of radical love of justice that has the potential to make this nation be a great nation always, and not be a nation that's false to its own values, false to that notion of really believing in freedom and justice. One of the things I say in the book is that there can be no love without justice.
Well, there you have it. When I heard her say that last night, I was like, exactly. And, having had watched the Marianne Williamson pieces, when I heard her talk about love, and then I saw just how absolutely destroyed she was just pulled through the mud and, just like called a crystal lady. And it was like apostasy, about love. And I think that Bell Hooks is so right about that. It's funny because it seems like the left has the policies, the actions that would be about love. Okay, let's share the wealth around here so that everyone is taken care of, so that everyone is loved, so that everyone's, so that the love of God that quote unquote we all believe in, how they would give it rhetoric on national politics, would be coming to you, delivered directly via our social service. You know what I mean? Like we have the loving policies, but well, not all. I'm not saying we, I'm saying radicals. I'm not mostly progressives. I don't even want to talk about foreign policy, but generally speaking, we have loving policies and we never talk about them.
Well, I love that you bring that up, because one thing that I think about a lot is the water we swim in this society stems from the idea that people are not fundamentally valued, right? Everything we have, whether it's you have to have this luxurious career in order to afford basic human needs getting met in a sustainable way, or it's, this genre of literature that she talks about a lot, the self-help books aimed at women, you have to be this type of person to earn communion with another person through partnership. Like everything is based around this idea that people are not just inherently worthy of value. And that doesn't have to be that way. Mm-hmm. We could have a society which looks at individuals as, oh, you know what? If you are a person born on this planet, you have value.
It always gets me that I'm sorry, go ahead, Jocelyn.
No, what were you going to say? Sorry.
It always gets me that like Fox News, I'm just thinking back to Tuesday's show, like Fox News, we looked at what Fox News and the evangelicals were doing, and how Fox is basically parroting sort of evangelical talking points. I kind of lost my train. That they say, oh, we're the party of Jesus, kind of,
right.
And then they do like hateful things and they make excuses and they are vicious and they support a structure that's vicious and they are the mouthpiece of a vicious, violent structure. And I don't understand how the followers cannot see that. Could someone explain to me? I mean, I explained it myself on the last show. I just still get mad. My thought about it is that people have been brainwashed to make someone into their guru, their god, their priest, their priestess. Someone has to know more about this than they do. Trusting their inner instinct, their inner judgment is not safe. It's not to be done. Absolutely not. Read this book or that book written by this guy or that guy at some other time. Don't read anything into it. Don't think your own thoughts. Listen to exactly what we say. And that's how you stay safe. And if you veer from this, one, you'll be crucified. Look what we did to that guy, and two, everything will fall apart. Your family will fall apart, blah, 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 whatever the threats are that they have there. So they just teach people to, just to not think for themselves and to not trust their inner knowing. Now that if I ever run for office, they're going to be like, she believes in inner knowing, and that'll be the end of it. They'll clip this segment, Jocelyn, and destroy my career.
I don't want that.
No, but anyway, with that already out there, there's a lot of other segments.
Well, I mean, I love that you bring up the evangelicals, right? Because it is something that I can't get out of my head is the way this aggressive, stringent, violent religiosity has informed American capitalism and the way American capitalism informs it. It's like this very vicious cycle of like, oh, you're not going to heaven, which is like not what the gospels were supposed to be. It was actually supposed to be the complete opposite. Like, you know, you're worthy of love no matter what. It was a very radical notion in ancient
Yeah, and how
Rome.
about you have to love your brother? And Fox,
Yes.
Fox and these other any right wing outlet out there is basically telling you to hate with a veneer of love. Oh, well, you can tolerate the gays, but they're still wrong, and they're
Right.
still sinners. It's like, no, everyone is created equal in the eyes of God. And also, I think we have that in our Constitution, except for the boy lady part, or I think those were in the important pieces was equality
You would
in our country. God, we could talk all day. I mean, I just put 2-minute, 4-minute clips up there and look at, this is why the depth of her work, the depth of what she did. One of the things I was going to do was just open up her book to any page,
right?
Read a paragraph, and and I did that a few times before this as like a fun kind of exercise.
I kind of thought about that too. I was looking through my Bell Hooks books last night. I was like, but it's just, there's so much. I mean, I do think, the more we're talking, I do think that All About Love is a good starting place for anyone who hasn't had the pleasure, but her first
They're
book,
all good.
Right. Like, that's a thing though.
Seriously. Yeah. If you don't want to read about love, you can read about class, you can read about race, you can read about gender, you can read about writing. This book is kind of about writing and alcoholism and creativity and God. I mean, it's all in here like one big thing.
She just has that. Yeah. I never met Bell Hooks. I don't, but she is just clearly such an integrated human being. Like, her emotional self and her intellect, it's all together. And what comes out of that is easily like one of the I
even enjoyed watching her speak with Cornel West, because he would say this, and she like, well, no, I don't exactly agree about that. And she didn't pause, or I just really respect her ability, but it wasn't a big like cockfight. You know what I mean? Like there is like the internet is all about cockfights, and look who said this, and then that one said that, and Brianna Joy Gray this, and Jimmy Dore that, and this guy this, and the other one that, and it's it's not, it's just like just the way of talking. Of course, they're both on the same side, obviously, so their disagreements are just
okay. No, but you know what it is? This is why Bell Hooks is so powerful. A patriarchal view of female power has really succeeded in making a lot of women, I don't even blame them, falling prey to this.
Oh, Jocelyn, you were just about to say something brilliant, and now you're gone. Come back to us.
Oh,
there
no,
you are. Oh, you're back. Okay,
I'm sorry.
Please, no, but do that again.
Basically, like modeling toxic masculinity as feminism, which it isn't. Right? Like, my goal personally is not to be, the female version of a toxic man. I have no interest in that. And Bell Hooks doesn't accept that paradigm. She's like, yeah, no, women are great as they are. It's the system that's the problem.
It's interesting. It goes back to something that you just said not too long ago within this conversation about how, in order to go out there, you have to button it up and not be so emotional. Well, if women had run everything, men would be reading books about how to emote. Like if you want to be successful in the workplace, you need to emote and share yourself. It's,
and at the very least have, oh, see, look, she's about to say it way better than I am.
Dominator culture has tried to keep us all afraid. Thank you, Giancarlo. I forgot about these. To make us choose safety instead of risk, sameness instead of diversity, moving through that fear, finding out what connects us, reveling in our differences. This is the process that brings us closer, that gives us a world of shared values of meaningful community. Beautiful.
I love that. And it does make me, I mean, like, the fight ahead of us is a hard one, because it's like, you need to feed your family, and you need to have health insurance, and you need to do all these things. But what she writes about and based her life around is this idea that what our culture currently demands us is for us to chop off the most pure and human parts of ourselves to engage in that society effectively. And I think that part of the cleanup crew is changing that exchange. Like, yeah, maybe we shouldn't have to be cold, competitive, sociopathic people in order to basically have a good, prosperous life.
Yeah, exactly. Oh God. Wait, we have a couple more. Let's show those other ones that you have. There we go. I will not have my life narrowed down. I will not bow down to somebody else's whim or to someone else's ignorance. She must have been exhausted. She must have. Doesn't it feel slightly exhausting to be that way all the time, especially given the current circumstance?
She wrote.
I mean, she died. She's like, I'm done.
Well, and
maybe not. I'm just. Playing.
She wrote her first book at 24, so it's like we really were getting the benefit of a woman who spent her entire life reflecting on these topics, and I don't know. I just think that's really beautiful.
Absolutely. And here's this. Our final one. Knowing how to be solitary is central to the art of loving. When we can be alone, we can be with others without using them as a means of escape.
Oh, I love that.
And with that, we say thank you to Bell Hooks. Our condolences to her family. Our condolences to ourselves for the great loss. And our condolences to anyone else who's been touched by her work, which, whether you've read it or not, you literally have been touched by her work because she has affected society. Jocelyn, in final word, we were going to discuss on the Act TV meeting of what we're going to do these shows about this week. We discussed the Elon Musk cover of Time magazine, and we were going to talk about that, AI, etc. And then Bell Hooks died, and we scrapped that plan. And I'm so glad we did because, Elon Musk, that the Times cover is not like someone who's great or someone who won an award, etc. It's someone who affected people's lives, the greatest number of people's lives over the course of the year or whatever. And I would argue that actually, Bell Hooks and her work and the way it has changed and shifted our society would have been a much better choice for that cover.
I agree. And, I know we're over, sorry, but I think that if we're going to keep doing this kind of work, whether it's talking about these issues or just being the work of being a human in a very fractured time, we need to be able to articulate what we're for, not just what we're against. And I think if she did anything, it was that. In every single book she wrote, she was so adept at talking about the greater parts of being a human being and why they are worth preserving. So that's
well said, Jocelyn. I'm so glad you suggested that we do this, and it was great even just preparing for. I really enjoyed the preparing segment, and yes, and of course, she obviously her effect and her work lives on, and that's it, I guess. You're watching Act TV. We will be back on Tuesday with, I believe. Oh, Jocelyn, don't leave. No, come back here. We gotta say goodbye. I don't want to just you're out of here. Thanks, Jocelyn. Thanks for being on the program. I appreciate it as usual.
All right, bye.
We will goodbye. Tuesday at 2:00, we're doing our Act TV rundown of the year's topics. So look forward to that. Jocelyn's, you're going to be with us for that, right?
Absolutely.
It's going to be great. Act TV's favorite topics of the year. These are a few of my favorite things. That's what we're going to be doing. Thanks a lot, Jocelyn. See you Tuesday.
Have a lovely day, guys. Bye.
All right. You're watching Act Now. I'm Julianna Forlano. Click, like, act, share, tell people, do things. You can find me on Julianna Forlano on Twitter. You can find Act TV on every platform. If you're on Insta, we're on Insta. If you like watching Roku channels, we've got one of those. If you're watching, you can watch us on Apple TV. You can go to YouTube. There's even more shows on YouTube that aren't on our Roku channel and everything. So we've got a lot. We're even on Facebook, trying to fight the tide over there. Anyway, thank you so much. Thanks to Giancarlo for producing this program. Thanks to anyone who left a comment. I forgot to look. And Giancarlo is so beautiful and kind of shy that he doesn't want to bust in and say, hey, Rose from Detroit said, this woman changed my life or whatever. So I will go back and read them myself just so I know where you guys are at. And we will see you on Tuesday. Thanks so much for watching.